Ciao,
Hello.
Jane. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you.
Yes, finally. It's been a while.
God, it's been ages. I can't even think. It's been a few years.
I think so. Yes,
I think you had longer hair though.
probably. Probably.
So listen, it's so great to see you. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts with your wines, because I really liked your wines this year. They were very consistent and had excellent structure.
We are actually very satisfied. Very satisfied because 2017, of course, wasn't an easy vintage from a weather point of view, because it was a warmer year, it was drier, but especially because everybody is thinking about 2017 as a warmer vintage. The real problem was the drought, because in the summer we practically didn't have rain for about 50 days in a row, which is a lot. And we actually didn't have problems because we have older vines, so they have deeper roots. They go down for 5 or 6 meters into the soil. But we could see from neighbors, maybe where they have younger vines, they were really suffering because they had, especially in August. I remember in August we had about 10, 12 days when we had 40 degrees Celsius, and you could see younger vines with leaves which were turning brown. And that means that in that case, the ripening of the grapes stops. So that was an issue. But for us, really, our older vines had very bright leaves, very green and shining. They were really, really beautiful. So that's why even by tasting the Barolos 17s, there is such a freshness and acidity which nobody is expecting.
A number of producers I've spoken to, they were really surprised they're like, even were surprised by the freshness.
So I always say that if you taste these wines blind, you will never think of a vintage like 2017, like a warmer year, because of the acidity. So we're tasting the 17s in these days quite often because it's the new vintage, but it's always amazing. And they are also very approachable because it's a sweeter tannin, very ripe already.
That's right. And tell me, one thing that was interesting is I found that you could really see differences in tannin structure from different wines. Like some wines were more muscular, while some wines were more refined, the tannins. For example, like the Ceretta from you were very toned and beautiful tannins, while let's say the
Margherita.
Yeah, it was Margherita, exactly. Yeah, dusty, layered. No, they were very fine as well. Creamy. I think it was more the San Rocco, but you can see differences in tannins. And I had a feeling that some of the, let's say, vineyards not directly in the sunlight or higher up made wines with more refined tannins. Do you think expositions made a big difference in 17?
Yes, in 17, especially the full south exposures, which receive more sunlight, were trickier. For instance, you mentioned Cerretta. Cerretta is in the freshest area of Serralunga d'Alba.
Ah.
So the entire menzione geografica, the entire single vineyard, is in the freshest area in Cerretta, because there's a lot in Serralunga, because there's a lot of wind, especially at night, which pulls down the temperature. So
and that was my favorite wine. Yes. I could really see that just beautiful tannins. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's that's your second year, right?
Exactly. Yes. Cerretta is our new baby. And it was a great debut last year with the 2016 vintage, which my father dedicated to the centenary. And by the way, it was an honor to see it in the list that you had of your top 100 Italian wines of 2020. So
Yeah, of
it was
course.
a great satisfaction. It was also the wine of the week when you tasted it.
Yeah.
So it was really an amazing satisfaction, especially
No,
for the
you.
first vintage.
So what have you changed recently? Because I can really see the wines have more precision now, and I really think that there's, you're just going to keep on going up in quality. You seem to be, just on your way now. What have you changed? Has it been more in the vineyards or anything in the cantina?
We haven't really changed something maybe in the style in the vineyards or in the cellar. It is just much more attention to detail. Like my father, is a terrible perfectionist.
Yeah, he is.
That's why it's not so easy to work with him. But now, I'm quite used to it after more than 10 years working full time here. So, yeah, and he has an amazing experience because he has already done more than 40 harvests. So
Wow.
40 vintages is really a lot. In the cellar, we always pay attention not to cover the grapes too much.
Yeah.
Also with the fermentations, the macerations, we have maybe during the last I would say 8 years, 5 to 8 years, we have slightly longer macerations. So we have gone back like when our grandfathers, great grandfathers, it was just normal back then to macerate their Barolos for a long time. So now we macerate the Barolos for about 55 to 60 days on the skins.
Wow.
Which is for nowadays standards is a long time, very long time.
But it's interesting because your wines are tannic, but they're good tannins, and like I like tannic wines just because I like classic structured wines. But you really have a nice combination of intense tannins, but they're not overly astringent or dry.
That is very important.
Yeah.
My father always says that because, of course, Barolo has to have tannins for sure, but it must be a sweet tannin, and that's due to the phenolic ripening.
Yeah.
The decision of the picking date, for instance, is essential because sometimes we have the right amount of sugar, but the tannins are not fully ripe yet. So we may wait another 10, 12 days to achieve the complete ripening. And there you get the sweetness of the tannins.
So in the end, of the 3 vintages, you have 3 excellent years, 15, 16, 17. What's your favorite?
That's a good question. It's hard to choose because they are so different.
Yeah.
I think probably the 16s are the youngest ones right now. Because I think the 17s are more approachable than the 16s right now.
Yeah.
So probably I would keep the 16s for the future. I would drink the 15s now, which is beautiful. Now the 15s are beautiful. And I will drink the 17s maybe next year. So
good advice.
Really, it's
and also it depends on the wine too, and also what you like.
Exactly, your mood, what you're eating.
But it's the first time. Go ahead.
I tend to like, in any case, younger vintages.
Yeah, me too.
Especially because for us winemakers, we have to get to know the new ones, and they vary a lot, especially during the first years. So we like to taste them quite often.
You mean drink them?
Exactly. Exactly.
So we have all the single vineyards. So let's at least taste those together because it'd be fun. We haven't tasted in a long time. Well,
right.
What would you like? Yeah. What would you like to start with?
So I would suggest the Bricco Fiasco first.
Okay. Yeah, I have it.
Good.
But this is a really, I like the tannins in this. It's sort of dusty. They're very powdery tannins. Really,
Fiasco,
yeah.
Our historical vineyard in Castiglione Falletto. The vines now are 85 years old. So
oh my God.
They were last replanted by my grandfather in the 40s. So it's really an amazing heritage. And we're lucky to have really the highest part of the Bricco Fiasco, really the top position.
And who's below you? Is that Scavino?
Yes, the vineyard is about, I think, 6 hectares in total. And it's split in half. Yeah.
It's really, really fine textured. So now we do
Margheria.
Okay.
So there's clay, limestone, great minerality in the wine, and also I love the saltiness in Margheria.
Yeah, you really get it on the. I didn't notice it. This has so much roses too. It's really gorgeous, and the tannins are just so integrated. It's really a wine you could drink so easily now, and it has great structure too.
And the acidity, which gives freshness.
Yeah.
But my father really, it was important for him not to, because especially in July and August, the sunlight was so intense. So it was essential to avoid sunburns.
Yes.
On the grapes. Because if you get that, they will give you a bitter taste, which you will never get rid of.
How interesting.
For us, macerating our skins for 55 days in the tanks, you will always have some skins which are burnt if you get sunburns, and they are impossible to remove. So they will stay there and they will give a bitter taste to the wine. And that's a big
interesting.
That's a big issue. I remember my grandfather was always telling us back in the past to shade a little bit the grapes with the leaves. And that's the ideal way to make them ripen in the best way.
So now do we do San Rocco then?
San Rocco, yes. Always Serralunga.
Yeah.
San Rocco is the first vineyard my father was able to buy in Serralunga d'Alba in the early 90s.
Oh, okay.
The vines were already planted, so they are now 65 years old.
Oh, so pure.
And this one is always our darkest Barolo. The soil there is almost 100% clay, so you really feel the Serralunga character.
Mm.
Darker fruits, bramble, blackberries.
Totally.
And this is another full south, top of a hill. It's actually full south and southwest, because we have almost pretty much the entire crew in San Rocco. So it's about 3 hectares.
And it's very round and beautiful. And not Ceretta.
Ceretta. It's such a joy for us to finally show Ceretta, because you know the story behind this vineyard. My father and my grandfather at that time were able to find it in 1992. But the previous owner wasn't such a perfectionist like my father. So he decided to replace the entire vineyard. And we're talking about more than 10,000 vines. But then they were too young for my dad to produce a single vineyard. So initially he used Ceretta for Langhe Nebbiolo.
No.
And yes, for the first 5 to 8 years, it was Langhe Nebbiolo. Then they graduated to Barolo Classico. And finally, last year, they turned 30. So he was like, we cannot wait any longer. And we released it. And that's why he decided to dedicate it to the 100th anniversary of the winery, because of such a perseverance. Imagine doing something today and waiting for 30 years to show it to people. I have no idea how I was able to do that.
Ok, cari, grazie.
Ciao,
Arrivederci.
grazie.
Ciao.